Hey, everybody. Welcome to the family meeting. Welcome to the family meeting. We are about to jump in today. First of all, I would like to say welcome and let us know in the chat. Let me know in the chat where you are watching from. Where are you joining the family meeting from? Today, we are going to talk about the California ethnic studies model curriculum, and I can't wait to jump into this. It's gonna be a good conversation. I know I can be. Yeah, y'all think it's an earthquake. We kind of redesigned the set, and we have a camera that's actually attached to the table that my computer and mic sit on. So then when I bump the table, it shakes everything. I apologize. So yeah, let's get into it. Many of you guys saw that on Monday, I went and spoke at my very first school board meeting. And I say first because I really hope that I speak at more school board meetings. I had no idea. One, for the longest time, I thought that you had to be a parent in order to speak at a school board meeting, because why would they let people who are not parents, who don't have kids in the school district, come and speak at their meeting? I don't know, but they do. So hey, here's that. And then I also thought that maybe you had to actually live in the city of the school board that you're speaking at. You don't. These are some things that make you go, things that I didn't know. And so I was invited to, I don't even know that I was invited. I might have invited myself, but a friend of mine came and asked me some questions. And at the end of it, I was like, we should, let's go talk about this. And I didn't really know what I had signed myself up for, or was getting into. But I do believe that if we are going to have conversations on ethnic studies or teaching history, and teaching an accurate history, we should do that in a way that is not riddled with critical theory, critical race theory, and that does not marginalize a group of students. And so that is exactly what I said. I had 3 minutes to do it. And there, you know what I learned? What I learned on Monday is that every word matters. Like, you can't, at times you can't, we don't have time for the fluff. Like, what are you going to say, and how are you going to say it, and how are you going to say it in a way that makes the most impact? And so I had 3 minutes, and I actually had my iPad up there and I was reading off of my iPad, but someone before me went and said, I just, and look, y'all know me. It was a white person. And they were just like, I just want my kids to know the accurate version of history. And it just irritated me to my core. I was so irritated that I actually went off of the script that I had in front of me to remind people that this isn't a conversation about history. Like, who's really saying, like, oh, don't teach history? We've had Black history for how long? No one has put up this fight that we aren't going to have this in our classrooms. But we still don't have an accurate history. The history that we have of Black history always, promotes the best. It tells the hardships and the best narratives of Black history, but it doesn't tell the ugly parts of Black history. I mean, the parts where Blacks have participated horribly with other Blacks or with other people in our nation. And so that was what I said. I was like, hey, no one is, no, I don't want to play it. You guys can go and find it on, I mean, you can, if you want me to play it, I will. You can put it in the chat. Just put on one if you want me to play the thing. I feel like it's been played a lot. A lot of people have seen it. So it's on Facebook, it's on our YouTube page, but I will play it if y'all want. But yeah, so this guy, he just wants his kids to, have this accurate history of, accurate knowledge of history. And I'm just like, so why don't you get up here and tell me about the Black slave traders? Like, why don't you tell me about the, Black Confederate Army, Black people in the Confederate Army who were fighting for the ability to be able to keep their Black slaves? And we're not talking about, just owning family. I actually did a video on that a couple of days ago as well. And it's just like, these people, and I'm sure it is from a place of compassion, of like, I really want to be compassionate. I really want to make sure that other people are uplifted too. But that some people have just bought into a lie. It is such a lie. And it really rattles me, because I'm like, so you're willing to participate in this lie and basically become the useful idiot on the team to to advance a narrative that you really don't have much information about. Krista hates the fact that I use the term useful idiot. And I can see that because she's putting her head down in her hand over here in the corner. But that's what it becomes. Like, we have to remember, what is the push of this ideology that's going forward. It's a push that really seeks to dethrone the West, to kind of to jar the West, to get rid of capitalism, to get rid of family and things like that. And so we have to be able to have that conversation and realize that if I'm standing before people who have influence and power to be able to make decisions that in educating children, how do I use my time? How do I use my words? Oh, she's so irritating, y'all. I wish I could turn my camera. So let's go and dig into this. The school board that I went to is a school board for the city of Glendora. And when I went on their website to look at their actual, ethnic studies proposed curriculum, I didn't actually find one. What I found was an outline of a curriculum or a potential curriculum. And Krista, if you can put that up. The one from Glendora. So this is their ethnic studies outline. And it doesn't say much. The first page really says nothing. 1 semester minimum, they'll have 4 different groups. There needs to be a board approval for a course outline. They were actually supposed to have a vote that day to vote for the course outline, but one of the board members was absent, and so another woman asked that the vote be pushed back to the next meeting. But if you scroll through, you can see there's a teacher committee, 13 volunteer teachers from content areas. There's training. We can keep scrolling. Glendora High School knowledge sharing, winter, spring 2024, deciphering, filtering info, creation, curriculum creation, summer of 24 to current. Looks at community committee members, 13 members, 6 current GUSD parents, 5 GUSD students who will take the course. And then when you get to the last page, let's scroll to, Krista, let's go to curriculum outline overview. We see that the first 2 units, building classroom culture, engagement, behavioral, emotional, cognitive. The last 4 units are Native American, Indigenous people, Latin American, African American, Asian American, and Pacific Islander. And then the curriculum outline overview will be 4 core themes: identity, history, and movement, exploring economic, social, and political systems, and then social movement and equity. And that, folks, is the outline.
That's it.
It doesn't say much. It does not say much at all. And so I don't know what they were going to vote on, because you can't vote. This isn't a curriculum. They haven't put forward anything that would tell me what you're actually going to teach my child. But this is what they're going to vote on. Now, personally, and y'all know I'm a little petty, my personal thought or my personal theory is that it would be great if they could slide this under, get that vote taken care of while it's still in this, outline format. And then once the vote has been passed, we can now fill out these things with some more nefarious type of curriculum, or more maybe socialist or critical theory leaning type of material. And so that's all that Glendora has for their potential curriculum, just this brief outline. And it is public. I'm not sharing secrets or anything like that. It's on the Glendora Unified School District. In the search bar, just type in ethnic studies and it will pop up.
But what I'm wondering is this all that's public of what they're voting on? Like, there's got to be more to it than that, like behind the scenes.
When I searched for it, this was all I saw. I am willing to be wrong. I will come on and publicly apologize if I have misrepresented Glendora Unified School District. When I went on to their website, this was all that I could find. on their ethnic studies content or ethnic studies curriculum. But you know what I did find, and what I've had for a while is the California model curriculum. So I actually know someone who was a part of developing the curriculum for their school district based off of the model curriculum that California has proposed. This person is a believer, they are, a historic Christian, and so they wanted to participate in the development of this curriculum so that they could push back against some of the, more out there ways of thinking and more out there ideologies that the curriculum can put forward. And so I want us to look at some of the model curriculum. And we're going to talk about what does it say? What does this mean? My hope and goal is to connect this back to a lot of the critical race theory conversations, because when we dropped my video from the school board, there was pushback. No one is teaching critical race theory in schools. That was someone's complete, like, they were very upset. No one is doing this. And so I pushed back and I said, well, if you listen, actually listen. I didn't say that people were teaching critical race theory in schools. What I said is that the praxis of critical race theory was being taught in schools. It's different. And so when we think about how is the outworking of critical race theory being pushed in our schools, we can see some of that when we read the model curriculum for California. This would be the same, I would say, in any other school. You just need to find out where it's happening at. And so let's go to that model curriculum. So this is a 640-page document. I am going to go through some of the pages. It starts out looking just at, like, hey, what are we doing? What is our mode, our approach? How do we define certain things? And then toward the end, it gives different ideas for what lessons you can do, or what lessons you can do within each unit. And so I'm going to start on, Krista, this is going to be page 15. Okay. So right at the top, it says, by asking students to examine and reflect on the history, struggles, and contributions of diverse groups within the context of racism and bigotry, ethnic studies can foster the importance of equity and justice. Not equality, but of equity, or equal outcomes and justice. If I keep going, ethnic studies requires a commitment among its teachers to personal and professional development, deep content knowledge, social emotional learning. So this is SEL. There's a piece of this curriculum that will import SEL into it, or it should have some kind of SEL foundation. If you want more information on SEL, because I'm not going to go down that path in this conversation, Krista has done an interview with Kelly Ski. Did you also do just a SEL teaching by yourself, right? Are those on Theology Mom or on Center for Biblical Unity?
Both.
Okay, if you go to YouTube, you can find those on the Theology Mom page or on the Center for Biblical Unity page. I would also encourage you to follow Kelly Ski, SKE, Kelly spelled Kelly, and then SKE. She has done a ton of great work in helping people to understand what is SEL, the social emotional learning, and what are the concerns that we as historic Christians should have when thinking about social emotional learning. All right, so now I'm going to scroll down to defining ethnic studies. You're going to have to scroll. I know. As a field, ethnic studies seeks to empower all students. Okay, we should be thinking about that, because I'm going to start asking the question of who is the all? Does the all mean all, or does the all mean some? And if the all means all, is it really all? As a field, ethnic studies seeks to empower all students to engage socially and politically, and to think critically about the world around them. Okay. Socially, politically, and critically are words that we should be paying attention to. It is important for ethnic studies courses to document the experiences of people of color in order for students to construct counter narratives and develop more complex understanding of the human experience. It is important for ethnic studies courses to document the experiences of people of color, but I thought this was for all students. Is it for all students or is it for students of color? And if it's for all students, are we going to document the experiences of all the students? Or if it's for all students, do all the students need to learn about the people of color? Thus, the white students just need to come in and learn about the people of color and the injustices they've experienced. Have white people not experienced any injustice? I have questions. Because of the interdisciplinary nature of this field, ethnic studies courses may take several forms. However, central to any ethnic studies course is the historic struggle of communities of color, taking into account the intersectionality of identity, gender, class, sexuality, among others, to challenge racism, discrimination, and oppression and integrate the systems that continue to perpetuate inequity or inequality. Okay, so part of what I want to highlight is this intersectional approach. Kimberly Crenshaw has said that CRT, she's the progenitor of, or one of the progenitors of CRT. CRT must take an intersectional approach. It must view culture, view society through an intersectional lens. And so when I look at someone, I am looking at them from this approach of their sex, their class, their race, their age, all of their different intersections to see in which ways they are susceptible to being oppressed. But I thought critical race theory wasn't being taught. And so this is what I mean when I say it's the praxis of. I don't need to tell you that we are going to study critical race theory today. What I can tell you is the word intersectionality. Or I can leave intersectionality off of the table altogether and ask you, well, how many different ways do you think someone might be oppressed or marginalized? That's intersectionality. I don't have to say the word. The field also addresses the concept of intersectionality. Okay, so ethnic studies as a field also addresses the concept of intersectionality, which recognizes that people have different overlapping identities. For example, a transgender Latina or a Jewish African American. These intersecting ideas or identities shape individuals' experiences. Okay, let's go back. You guys, I have a lot. I don't know if y'all saw the graphic I made, but you need to get your popcorn and a notepad because we're going to be here for a while. Let's see. It also leads, we're going to go to, page 16 for you if you type it in. Okay. It also deals with the often overlooked contributions of many areas of government, politics, the arts, medicine, economics, and others made by people of color, and provides examples of how collective social action can lead to a more equitable and just society in positive ways. Provides examples of how collective social action. If you are not familiar with Marxism or even the social justice movement and a lot of the thought behind it, part of what is people are looking to build is or they're looking to have happen is liberation through revolution. How do we obtain or attain liberation through revolution? Well, we do that through activism. We do that through action. And so when I read something that says collective social action can lead to more equitable and just societies in positive ways, one of the first things for me that goes off is, are you looking to create activists? But I think we might get there in some other ways as we keep going. We're going to go to page 20. How do you teach ethnic studies in a K-12 environment? And I'm just reading right at the top. It says, at the college and university level, ethnic studies and related courses are sometimes taught from a specific political viewpoint. In K to 12 education, it is imperative that students are exposed to political perspectives and taught to think critically and form their own opinions. Ethnic studies highlights the importance of untold stories and emphasizes the danger of a single story. In The Danger of a Single Story, Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie argues that reducing people to a single story creates stereotypes and denies their humanity. Now, part of what we need to understand about the author that they even recommend, Chimamanda Adichie, is that she is not favorable of the West in our ideas of capitalism and family values and just how we run, but she is also a feminist author. Who thinks that we should highlight the stories of the global South and marginalized communities above stories of majority culture and the West. When we think about the lens that this curriculum is coming from and the way that they want teachers to teach ethnic studies, one of the references down below is a guy named Julio Camarota, a social justice approach to achievement. Part of this entire curriculum, and I would say a good portion of it, is from a social justice approach. It is a critical social justice approach. How are we teaching kids to have a critical lens as they observe the communities around them? When they think about race, when they think about gender, we'll talk about LGBTQ plus stuff in a second. How are we looking and observing the world around us through a critical lens? And when I say critical, yes, I am using that from the term critical theory. Guiding values and principles of ethnic studies. The foundational values of ethnic studies are housed in the conceptual model of the double helix, which interweaves holistic humanization and critical consciousness. Humanization includes the values of love, respect, hope, and solidarity, which are based on the celebration of community cultural wealth. The values rooted in humanization and critical consciousness are the guiding values each ethnic studies lesson should include. I find that very interesting. Critical consciousness is a term that came about through Paulo Freire, the Marxist from, I believe it's Brazil. And if we are, again, if we are not teaching critical theory, if this is not the praxis that we are applying for our young people, why are we using people who are not for the West, people who have Marxist lenses, people who espouse critical theory or critical race theory? So I do have a little bit of information on critical consciousness in case this is the first time you're hearing this word. According to Paulo Freire, and I think he wrote about critical consciousness in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Pretty sure that's the book he wrote about it in, but it is a reflective awareness of social, political, and economic contradictions. So critical consciousness encourages people to take a look around them and automatically see what is happening in the world around them, what has gone wrong. Today, we would use the term woke. I agree with James Lindsay when he says that the term woke has become synonymous with the ideas of critical consciousness. It is about looking out into society to see what has gone wrong and then trying to figure out, like, how do I solve this problem? And so when we think about critical consciousness in regards to critical race theory, it's really activism in education. How do we apply activism to education? How do I create activist students? But that is critical consciousness. It is a Marxist framework for teaching students. It is a Marxist lens or Marxist framework, because that is who Paulo Freire was, in our application of the text that we teach to students. Jane says the danger is a lot of this does sound good and reasonable if you don't know the full context of where it's coming from. Yes, it is. That is one of the huge dangers. And especially when it's sold to people, good intentional, like they have a good intention in their heart. Like, I just want history to be told from a full narrative, but you don't know the full narrative. You don't have a full narrative, because if you did, you would look at this and say, wait, there's a problem. But again, a lot of it does sound good. Like, hey, we want to give everybody a fair chance. But when you read this, we have, yeah, there's just so much that, we need to be aware of, especially in some of the key words that people are using. What? When is Krista coming back? Please tell her we miss her. I'll address Krista coming back toward the end. Let me see. So that was page 21. Oh, let me scroll down a little bit further below that quote, Krista. And it says, the ethnic studies course teaching and learning are intended to do the following: cultivate empathy, community actualization, cultural perpetuity, self-worth, self-determination, and holistic well-being of all participants. Okay, again, is it all participants or is it some participants? Especially, okay, so we should cultivate the holistic well-being of all participants, but especially Black people and Native people, Indigenous, people of color, the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Okay. One of the things that really just irritates me is that we're using this word all, but in reality, they don't mean all. And for me, as someone who likes things equal, um, I feel like this is such a disservice. This is such a way to damage one group of people. So now we have a classroom with white, Black, Native American, Hispanic, Chinese, and this, that, and the third. And we're going to talk about and elevate all of you guys over here. We're going to look at all of your accomplishments and the ways that white people have harmed you. And we're going to sit and make sure that we can have dialogue about that. But we're never going to talk about any of the accomplishments of white people. As a matter of fact, later in this, and I don't know if I've highlighted it, but it talks about the fact that we will directly talk about racism and white supremacy. Racism and white supremacy go hand in hand in this curriculum. But there's never any look at any injustice that has been done to white people, because if you're truly breaking down racism in accordance with the new definition of racism, white people can't experience racism and people of color can't be racist. And so to me, ain't no way. Let me be a white parent. Ain't no way on God's good green earth that I'm about to let my kid sit through that. We're going to have to figure something else out, because you're not going to sit and teach my child all of the ways that people who share their skin color have harmed these people. But so my kid don't ever get nothing celebrated. No, we ain't about to sit there and do that. Not to mine. Not to mine. But again, I don't know that many people understand that this is really what this is the turn this is going to take. I have sat in Black studies class. I remember one of the first classes I took in college was an African American studies class. And what did we do in that class? We talked about white people. We talked bad about white people too. And so, like, I am sure that the teachers in the Glendora Unified School District have more, respect for their students and those around them than to sit up and simply talk crap about the white kids in the class. But we also have to think about, well, what is unconsciously absorbed when my skin color is always made out to be the skin color of injustice and marginalization and racism and oppression. And these skin colors over here are always either the victims or the heroes. What does that really do? Let me scroll down. Let's keep going. Celebrate and honor Native peoples of the land and communities of Black, Indigenous, and people of color by providing a space to share their stories of success, community collaboration, and solidarity, along with their intellectual and cultural wealth. Center and place high value on the pre-colonial ancestral knowledge.
wish I could say.
Now,
I wish I could say.
now I'm half Haitian, and so there is a segment of my family that may worship the ancestral knowledge. But what ancestors are we? What? I don't really understand. What are we doing here? What exactly are we doing?
Can I just say something?
Go ahead. Unlock your mic.
I don't know if they can even hear me.
I don't know if they can hear you either.
I don't know.
Let me mute myself. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know.
I can't.
You got to mute me.
Go ahead.
This reminds me of a book that I read for my dissertation by Robert Chow Romero. It's called Brown Church, and it's all kind of starting to click for me right now. And you reading this, he teaches at UCLA, which is also in California, ironically. But this idea of community cultural wealth that they talk about, and community collaboration and solidarity and ancestral knowledge, that is exactly what he talks about in that book, Brown Church. I believe it's published by Baker. It's either Baker or Zondervan. I mean, it's a Christian, mainstream evangelical Christian publisher. But I feel like I'm reading right out of that book on that these ideas and critical consciousness have really helped to shape that book. There's a Biola Chapel message that is an entire chapel message by Robert Chow Romero, where all he talks about is the community cultural wealth of the nations and how they're going to bring it in. But it kind of, I'm wondering if he's borrowing it from this. Anyways, just a thought. This is crazy to me.
You gonna mute yourself? Yeah. So, yes, this is what we're doing here. Now, if we scroll down a little bit further, we see Chimamanda Adichie is recommended again. Tara Yasso, who is a critical race theorist, is mentioned. But again, there's no critical race theory. Critical race theory is not in our schools. Of course not. We can keep going. This is 22 now. So scroll up, I think. So yeah, there you go. Critique empire building in history and its relationship to white supremacy. That's the first time. This is the first time I feel like they've mentioned either majority culture or white. Racism and other forms of power and oppression. Connect ourselves to past and contemporary social movements that struggle for social justice and an equitable and democratic society, and conceptualize, imagine, and build new possibilities for a post-racist, post-systemic racism society that promotes collective narratives and transformative resistance. Okay, that word is what really got me, because transformative resistance, they are building activists in the classroom. How do we liberate the oppressed? How do we get to revolution? We must resist. What do you think the black fist is for? What do you think the black fist means? Resist. We will resist. And they tell you right here in your face. Promotes collective narratives of transformative resistance. Critical hope. We'll talk about the word critical in just a minute. And radical healing. We're going to go to page 24. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. But bridge building, now they're wanting to build these bridges. The interethnic bridge building is what they're talking about. But bridge building can also occur through the classroom sharing of students' personal stories and family histories. In this way, students can simultaneously learn to understand ethnic differences while also identifying underlying commonalities and personal challenges. What's the commonality of the white folks? Are they really going to be expected? Is a white student seriously going to be expected to share their history? Or are they going to be expected to sit there and listen? If we were all just coming to the table to have some, hey, this is how you've been successful and how you've been hurt. This is how you've been successful and how you've been hurt. Let's talk about, history of ethnicities within, America. We can look at how the Catholics were marginalized. We can look at the Irish. We can look at the Blacks. We can look at the Mexicans. Maybe I could get on board. Maybe. You might nudge me closer to the side of, okay, but this ain't that. This ain't that. Recognizing intersectionality is below that. Again, CRT must take an intersectional approach. Okay. If you're going to do any type of critical theory, critical race theory, especially, it must take an intersectional approach. It says at the bottom, to some degree, each person's individuality and identity are the results of their intersectionality. So right before that, it says, that oh man, I missed it. Some people it's something to the effect that some people may or may not be, impacted by their intersectionalities. But in reality, that last sentence that I just read is really the heartbeat behind it. To some degree, each person's individuality and identity are the result of intersectionality. So I am the byproduct of who I am because I am a Black female. Promoting self-empowerment and civic engagement, ethnic studies should help students become more engaged locally and develop into effective civic participants and stronger social justice advocates, better able to contribute to constructive social change. Well, we have to understand what do they mean by civic participants? I think we've had enough conversations at the Center for Biblical Unity for us to understand what they're meaning by social justice advocates. But again, when I'm an advocate, I am an activist. Like this is how to be an anti-racist. Like it is this idea of activism, this idea of going out and changing systems, seeing things through a critical lens. When I see things through a critical lens, then I understand what needs to be changed in our society. That would not necessarily be a problem if we had a standard by which we were actually looking into society. But the standard, or lack thereof, right now is critical race theory, which would say that any inequity is an injustice. Oh, Elaine, I'm glad you made it. Let's see. 25, supporting community focus. However, individual school districts may also choose to enrich their approach to ethnic studies by also devoting special attention to ethnic groups that have been significantly present in their own communities. I question what that means and how, if I lived in a predominantly white school district, what does that mean? What will that look like? Because what they're saying is, you can give special attention to ethnic groups that have been significantly present in their own communities. Well, are we seeing whites as having ethnicity? Like, are we gonna go back and say, well, I am, my ethnic lineage is from Hungary, and so we're gonna go and look into that. My ethnic heritage is German or Dutch. Are we gonna look into that? I doubt it, but they put it in here. And so I do want to be fair. Like if they're saying, hey, yeah, we're going to do that, that's, there it is. Or are we going to look at things from how their whiteness has oppressed people within their region? Let's see. Let me scroll to let's go to identity on page 42. With much of the field focusing on issues related to race and identity, teachers, especially those with limited ethnic studies knowledge, should engage in activities that allow them to unpack their own identities, privilege, marginalization, lived experiences, and understanding of an understanding and experience of race, culture, and social justice, while they are also learning about the experiences of others. That's for white people. Let me just tell you again. With much of the field focusing on issues related to race and identity, teachers, especially those with limited ethnic studies knowledge, should engage in activities that allow them to unpack their own identities. The word privilege, it gives it away. It lets you know who they're talking to. For teachers who may feel especially concerned about teaching ethnic studies, leading ethnic studies scholars highly recommend that they work through assignments like critical autobiography, critical storytelling, critical life history, or keeping a subjectivity journal to begin the process of constructively situating oneself in relationship to ethnic studies. But there's no critical race theory. And so what does it mean to take a critical lens, to have a critical approach? It means that you're questioning everything, especially what is considered normal. You're questioning your general assumptions. And I don't necessarily have a problem with questioning assumptions, or even looking into society and asking certain questions. But when the automatic bend is that, well, if I look into society and I question things, I automatically see injustice when I see inequity, that becomes a problem. I think it leads to cynicism when we look at everything through a critical lens. I wrote down some things that I thought about. I think it can lead to like an oversimplification of complex issues, especially. And so I can't just look at society and say, well, darn, there's only, a quarter of a percent, 0.25% of Blacks who are accountants. That's unjust. There is an injustice. We need to rally. Where's BLM? No, it's more complex issue than that. What about agency and preference? We need to be able to look into society and say, hey, I wonder why, and not always have to look at things through a critical lens or a critical approach. Oh, Jennifer has a good comments. She says, the problem is, from my experience, the board does not understand the terms, or they throw up hands and hide behind legal like legal jargon. I think that's what you're talking about. So on the board, I noticed that there were at least, I think, 3 PhDs.
EDDs?
No.
Oh.
No. There may have been 2 EDDs. I know that one is not an EDD. So there were 3, I'll just say 3 doctors, people with doctors. They didn't put in the hard work. They are farther along in their journey than I am. And so I was not opposed to talking about critical theory in its true form, or critical race theory in its true form, because they should know. But I think that there are some who don't know. But there are some who are just nefarious and want to push this stuff out and get it into their schools and into students. Jenny's getting inky with it, says questioning the normal puts you on the road to queer. So if y'all want to know my secret thoughts, this ain't about race. This ain't about race at all. This is about getting to a road to queer. But that's a whole nother conversation. So yeah, when we think about looking at things through a critical lens, how do we look at society and offer a different approach or have a different thought? It shuts down any type of conversation for a differing narrative or a differing approach. Let me keep reading. Thus, educators should work to build community within their classrooms. And this is part of that SEL piece. Be comfortable with sharing pieces, educators. Be comfortable with sharing pieces of their own identities and lived experience, and be equipped to holistically navigate and respond to students' concerns, discussions, and emotions. Educators should view student lived experiences as assets and understand that they themselves may not always have the answers. and therefore should seek opportunities to learn from their students and create room for teachable moments. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, if I was an educator, I don't know. I don't know that I need to share my lived experience with y'all. Can we get back to reading and writing and arithmetic? Like, at what point has the classroom become this place of emotional debrief? I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with that. If I was a parent, I don't know that I want my child having some emotional experience with their teacher, the teacher that I may not know, the teacher that may lead my child into queering or into some kind of race ideology. Like, when did we as a nation say, yeah, I really think that the teacher should also be the psychologist? And that the teacher should be sharing their lived experiences with the students. I have no desire to tell a 14-year-old what I did last night. And all I did last night was watch some Severance and People's Court and go to bed. But I said, that's none of your business. It's none of your 14. It's none of your business what I did last night. This is also true when incorporating literature in an ethnic studies course. Students need to see themselves represented as empowered individuals and experience a diverse range of complex stories to help them understand themselves as individuals and as members of group identity, and the lived experiences of others different from themselves. Students have shown that large majorities, or not students, studies have shown that large majorities of books published for children and young adults feature white characters. When characters of color or other marginalized groups, such as, here we go, Jenny, LGBTQ plus, do appear, they are often portrayed as stereotypes or exist at the fringes of the story. So what are we doing? We need to decenter anything white and straight. That's what they're telling you. Can we move this out of the way? Again, they do this flip-flop between all students and then students of color. All students and students of color. They want to make it seem like this is for all students, but in reality, this is only for students of color and the LGBTQ plus identifying student. But then you have to ask the question, well, why do I see so many white girls going over to the LGBTQ plus conversation? Because they sure as heck ain't welcomed in the regular conversation. So they have to become a piece of the marginalized group. Where do we get this way of thinking from? Or where do they adopt this way of thinking from things like this? And even without this official ethnic studies curriculum taught in California, this ideology already lives in so many of our school systems across the nation. We go down to the bottom of page 43. It says the usage of LGBTQ plus throughout this document is intended to represent an inclusive and ever-changing spectrum and understanding of identities. Y'all, they making your kids crazy. How many identities can you have? Because they are ever-changing. Historically, the acronym included lesbian, gay, bi, trans, but has continued to expand to include queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, allies, and alternative identities. Y'all, I praise God that this camera is on me right now, because the word that I really want to say, my gosh, what the literal heck? How many identities can one person have? And if there's a myriad of different identities, which identity is right? Or do I just become nothing at all? Or do I live as all things at once? I can't. 46. By democratizing in the technically third, right above that one. Yeah. By democratizing the classroom, educators are allowing multiple entry points for students to discuss ethnic studies theories like intersectionality. But again, CRT isn't in the classroom. an analytic framework coined by Black feminist legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw, who is also the progenitor or one of the progenitors of critical race theory, that captures how multiple identities, race, class, religion, gender, sexuality, ability, etc., overlapped or intersect, creating unique experiences, especially for those navigating multiple marginalized or oppressed identities. Intersectionality helps students better understand the nuances around identity and provides them with the skill to be able to engage and advocate for and with communities on the margins of the margins. Y'all, y'all, then y'all wonder why little Timmy color his hair blue and say he's a unicorn and a radical. This is insane. You 51. Useful theory, pedagogy, and research. Teachers and administrators should begin with a careful, deliberate analysis of their own personal identities, backgrounds, knowledge base, and biases. They should familiarize them. Now, sorry, hold on. Y'all, my gosh. Teachers should familiarize themselves with current scholarly research around ethnic studies instruction, such as critically and culturally or community relevant and responsive pedagogies, critical race theory, intersectionality, which are key theoretical frameworks and pedagogies that can be used in ethnic studies research and instruction. They are telling y'all point blank, critical race theory that can be used in ethnic studies instruction. I remember in 2020 when people would be like, no, it's not there. In 2025, y'all can't, if you say critical race theory ain't there, you a dang lie. You speak, you know you a lie. You know you a lie. And if you say, well, I've never seen it and blah, 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 then you a useful idiot. I don't know what else to tell you. At this point, your kids, this is what they're doing with your kids. This is what they're doing. Now, I know that I'm going to get a teacher who, comes on the thread eventually and says, I don't do that in my classroom. Great for you. Good for you. I am excited and happy. Please let me know the district that you in so I can refer a student to you. But in reality, this is the way that the California governor and California school board wants education to go. So while you may not do that as the single teacher, trust me, your days might be numbered, because if they get a whiff that you're not doing what they want you to do, I can assure you they're going to fire you. So I wouldn't, jump around proclaiming what you're not doing so loudly. If we scroll down to the bottom of 51, Krista, critical race theory is a practice of integrating race and racism of interrogating. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on, y'all. Is a practice of interrogating race and racism in society. CRT recognizes that race is not biologically real, but is socially constructed and socially significant. It acknowledges that racism is embedded within systems and institutions that replicate racial inequity or inequality, codified into law, embedded in structures, and woven into public policy. Okay, so when we think about critical race theory and what critical race theory asserts, it is that racism is always happening. It's kind of like Robin DiAngelo said, it's not to ask if racism is happening, but when and how. It is always happening.
That's a good question.
How many people think ethnic studies is more anthropological, a study of cultures? This is definitely not that. I think that there are a lot of misguided people who just haven't done their research because they just believe whatever the news media or, the school board tells them. We're just going to study history. No. And so that's what they go off of. Because I was like, there was a teacher who even got up there and said, I'm like a, I don't know, fourth, fifth grade teacher. And I just want to say that I support this. Have you read the literature, or do you support it? Do you support it because you're a socialist? Do you support it because deep down in your heart, you actually believe pedagogy of the oppressed? Like, you are in support of Paulo Freire's Marxist identifications and his theories. Because we can't have it both. You can't be a teacher and be like, oh, I didn't know. Y'all, I did not know does not work anymore. So if you somebody who flies around with this I don't know t-shirt on, take it off. Take it off. I don't know does not fly in 2025. We have way too much information at our fingertips. We cannot say when little Sally come home thinking her name is Steven that I didn't know. No, I'm sorry. We cannot say that when your child has come through the public school system, and we know what our public school teachers believe. With many, I'm not going to say every school teacher, but this is the stuff that they're encouraged to teach. No. I didn't know that t-shirt we got to take that one off. Oh, you got the sweatshirt on, it needs to go. Go on, throw that out. Here we go. 52. This is talking about Takaki's History of Multicultural America. He argues that within our national narrative, all communities must be able to see themselves. Thus, it is vital for teachers to engage a multitude of stories, narratives, sources, and contributions of everyone in America so that all students can see themselves as part and parcel of the grand American narrative. I absolutely love that, but everything before it tells me that that isn't true. It's not true in the truest sense. It's not true that they actually want all people to see themselves, that they're, and I'm a big, lover of representation. I love to see all the peoples represented, but it's not true. They don't want all the people represented. They want my people represented. They don't want Chris's people represented. And we should be asking the question of what harm does that do? What harm does that do to the minority students when all they may hear about a white student is how oppressive they are, how privileged they are, how bigoted they are, how they hold on to these biases? What it does harm all the way around. We're going to skip to 451.
451?
Yeah.
Oh my.
This is a 600 and something page document. I told you, girl, we got things to do. 451. We're gonna go on and scroll down. Then I'm gonna end it with this piece. What time is that? Oh, we got time. So this is actually, I'm done with looking at what the school board actually puts out for the model curriculum piece. This is now different lessons that people can use. Like if it was part of a unit, you could adopt this or do something like that. So it's more of like the suggested pieces as opposed to how the district is defining identity or defining biases or the literature that they suggest that you read if you're an educator. So suggested projects, but more of like suggested assignments or like suggested unit. Like if you have a unit, it normally has like an objective to it, the topics, the assignments, and all of that. So it's like a unit suggestion. So unit 4, social movement and advocacy. In this final unit, and this is the final unit for this, it's like an 8-week course or something like that. In this final unit, students will study and identify contemporary issues of oppression or threats to identity in order to become advocates for their community. Again, what are we creating? I am not creating a child who can think critically. That's not what I'm doing. I am creating a child who is a someone who sees society through a critical lens, and that's different. Critical thinking is that critical is different than critical theory. Let's okay. In this final unit, students will study and identify contemporary issues of oppression or threats to identity in order to become advocates for their community. Students will use previous learnings to develop their own empowerment plan to address their identified community concern. The topics. So the objective, is students will acquire tools to become positive actors in their communities to address a contemporary issue and present findings in a public forum. The topics: racism, LGBTQ plus rights, immigration rights, access to quality healthcare, income inequality, war on drugs, school to prison pipeline, poverty, religious persecution. I wonder what religions they think are being persecuted. That's my question. Access to equitable public education and gangs and violence. This unit contains an LGBTQ plus mini unit in which students will go beyond the notion of individual, community, state, and national identity and develop an understanding of respect for the LGBTQ plus community. Y'all, this ain't about race. Look at the movements that have happened in America. The queer movement is always followed right behind a big race movement. This ain't about race. Additionally, students will be able to understand gender stereotypes and will be able to clarify their own values and feelings by participating in class discussions and writing exercises. Assessment. Okay, so how do we assess these? These young whippersnappers, they're going to do an action research project. Students will create an action research project in which they identify a problem, issue, conflict, either locally or globally, and craft a project that addresses the problem. Okay, so they're going to create a research project in which they identify a problem, and then they are going to craft a project that addresses the problem in relation to a unit of the course. Their project should analyze the main issues of the problem, highlight what, if anything, is currently being done to stop it, and propose the solutions. This will be in the form of a written essay of no less than 1,500 words. Through this assignment, students will learn how to take a problem and develop a project out of that problem. Okay. Y'all, what they're teaching the kids to do, and this goes all the way back to what I said at the beginning when somebody came on and was like, they're not teaching critical race theory in the classroom. Well, you're right. They're not teaching, Kimberly Crenshaw, Mari Matsuda, Richard Delgado. Like, I think his name is Richard Delgado. Yeah. James Stefanich. Like, they're not reading those books. That's true, but they are teaching them how to build a critical theory. How do you develop a critical theory? How do you become an activist? How do you create more equitable societies? How do you look into society, see the problem, and then create the solution? Like, this is critical theory. These are critical theories. And so when you think of what is a critical theory or what makes a theory critical, a critical theory is something that looks into society, sees the problem, and then it offers the solution to the problem. And that's exactly what they're doing. It says they will identify a problem and craft a project that addresses the problem. But in order to be able to do that, I have to look at the world through a critical lens. Where is there inequity? The assumption behind the critical lens is that the inequity always equals the injustice. Y'all, I know that critical race theory ain't in the classroom, that critical theory isn't in the classroom, and that I am just, I don't know, making things up. But it's, y'all, this is what they're doing. I didn't even get into the universe of obligation. overview. I really want, there's so much more, you guys. There is so much more. There's an entire unit on students' obligations to one another and to their community, and what does it mean to be a member of the group. It's a unit called the universe of obligation, and it reflects, let me see if you can pull it up real quick. Not that one, it is the one that doesn't have that, that doesn't have that like bullet mark thing. Yeah, try that one. I think that's it. So this is another lesson. There's a ton of attachments that are connected to the curriculum for people to be able to use as additional resources. And this is a resource. The universe of obligation, it reflects on how individuals, communities, and nations decide who has rights that are worthy of respect and protection, with this introduction to the concept of the universe of obligation. So because we are already over time, let me just give you a brief synopsis of this. Who does our culture or our country say is worthy to protect? Is the immigrant worthy of protection? Why or why not? This is the mode or the lens through which they'll teach children to address, the conversation of immigration. And so if an immigrant is deported, did they not have the right to stay within the country? Why was it that they didn't have the right to stay within the country, but some others do? Oh, goodness gracious. There's so much to this that people just don't understand. Let me see. What does it mean to be a member of a group? In groups, we meet our most basic needs. In groups, we learn language and a culture or way of life. In groups, we also satisfy our yearning to belong. How the members of a group, a nation, or a community define who belongs and who does not has a lot to do with how they define their universe of obligation. Sociologist Helen Fine coined the phrase to describe the group of individuals within a society toward whom obligations are owed, to whom rules apply, and whose injuries call for amends or reparations. In other words, a society's universe of obligation includes those people who that society believes deserve respect and whose rights it believes are worthy of protection. This is a whole unit on basically privilege and how we look at who we protect, who we don't protect, and why we may choose to protect those people. Now, this is also very subjective, and the wording can be very tricky, because if I am deporting someone who rightfully should not be in our country, what the wording would say is that, well, we don't hold up our end of obligation to them, and that our obligation actually should extend way beyond, just our immediate family. You guys, because I'm over time, I cannot go as far into this as I want to. Maybe I'll do a small little video just on the universe of obligation and what that is. And yeah, actually look and see if it's being taught in any other schools or any other states. But I am highly concerned. And I've been concerned about the state of education. But this is highly, highly concerning. So if anybody ever tells you critical theory, critical race theory isn't in school, critical queer theory isn't in school, it is in. It is there. And just tell them, if you're wearing that I didn't know shirt, take it off. Go throw that away. That is it's so out of vogue. Like, it is not what we should be wearing anymore. We don't have excuse. We really don't. And our children are the ones who are, gonna suffer if we don't stand up and use our voice to be able to stand for them and to make a difference for them. Because the people who are pushing this definitely have nefarious intent. They are not ignorant. They are not sitting by talking about, I didn't know. What they don't have on is the I don't know shirt. They might have a jacket covering up the shirt that says, yes, I'm trying to queer your kids, but they don't have on a I didn't know shirt. We can stop the lie. And so with that, guys, I am out of here. Please make sure to download our CFBU mobile app and like our podcast, like our YouTube channel, like our Facebook and Instagram pages. But also I wanted to two things, because I told you I was going to talk about Krista. First, I will say that the Center for Biblical Unity in the month of May, we are doing a mid-year campaign, and our goal is $100 for 5 years of faithful ministry service. And so if you would like to contribute to the Center for Biblical Unity to help us with our day-to-day expenses and the podcast that we do and things like that, please go to centerforbiblicalunity.com and donate. If you don't have $100, that's okay, but please help us celebrate and donate to the Center for Biblical Unity. If you donate $100, we will send you our Pride Month t-shirt. But we are just wanting to do a mid-year fundraising campaign to make sure that we continue to stay on track with our budget and things like that for the Center for Biblical Unity. I can't believe it's been 5 years. That is absolutely ridiculous. The Center for Biblical Unity is no longer a baby. It's all growing up. And yeah, there's a lot to learn, but we are here by God's grace and faithfulness. And so we thank you for standing with us and supporting us. Again, you can support by going to Center for Biblical Unity, all spelled out.com, and hit the donate button. And then lastly, because someone mentioned Krista, I mentioned this on, I don't know that I mentioned it on our last All the Things, but Krista has finished her doctoral dissertation. So yay to Krista for completing that. And she has passed. She will walk her graduation stage in a couple of weeks. But after finishing up the hard work of writing her dissertation and things like that, she is taking some time off over the summer. And so, this kind of being like the really in the spring, going into the summer months, she is not going to be doing any I don't want to say any public ministry, but like she's not going to do any podcast. That's the word I'm looking for. She's not doing any podcast currently. And so Theology Mom, the family meeting, all the things, it's just going to be me and my guests, and all of my pettiness. Petty Mo may make an appearance, but we are encouraging her. The board has encouraged her just to take some time from the rip and run and go, 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 especially with the research and things like that she's done for the last, what has it been, a year and a half? Yeah, last year and a half, about 18 months of working, pretty nonstop on her dissertation, just to take some time to breathe and to rest. She, then she'll be back in, I'd say September, the first week of September. We will go back to All the Things together and podcast together. As long as the Lord say the same. That is what we're doing, you guys. And so let me make sure that I have addressed all the comments. So glad you guys are still here and growing stronger and stronger. Yes. Let's see. Are we still live? I got interrupted by a neighbor. Yes, we're still here. But there's no critical race theory in school. That's Krista. She deserves a break. Yes, she does. Thanks for this today. God works in mysterious ways. Funny how things of similar nature come together seemingly randomly to broaden your understanding. Yes, you guys. Please know that, that we do have an answer as the church, and culture wants us to adopt their answers, but there is a way that we can push back. We don't have to just send our kids out there to continually be educated, by Caesar. We can go out and do something different. We can homeschool. We can challenge boards. We can use our voice. I don't have a child, and yet it's still important for me to, I have nephews. It's important for me to go out and to speak and to push back and to challenge. There are kids in my life that I absolutely love and adore, and I don't want them to go through a school system that tells them that they don't matter, that they don't count, or to lift my nephews up because they're Black and Hispanic, but the white kids that I love, they don't get the same love. They don't get the same treatment. What they hear is that their whiteness has been a problem historically, that their ancestors have, always marginalized people. That's not it. if we're going to do all, we're going to really do all, and we're going to push for that. And so there is that. You guys, I will see y'all on All the Things on Saturday. I'm having a conversation with the one and only Melissa Doherty and her book, Happy Lies. And then we'll be back next week with another family meeting. You guys stay blessed. Bye.